It was supposed to be my engagement party. But right in front of everyone, he got down on one knee and proposed to my sister. She giggled and answered, "Yes." There were surprised shouts in the room. I just smiled. "Enjoy your moment." And then added, "But this place? It belongs to me." And then I turned to the security guards. "Uninvited guests can leave." And then I ruined their lives. Sometimes life rewrites your script right before your eyes. In the morning, I was a happy bride, and in the evening, I was a woman betrayed by the people closest to me. It's funny how everything can change in a matter of seconds. That evening was supposed to be the happiest of my life. I had booked the Vineyard Manor, the most luxurious banquet hall in the city, 6 months in advance. I spent 3 months coordinating the menu, flowers, and lighting. The dress by a designer I adore cost a fortune. It was blue, like Ethan's eyes. He always said that blue was my color. God, everything was so perfect. 150 guests, an orchestra, champagne flowing like a river. The restaurateur even sent his best chef to personally supervise the dinner. The flowers, peonies and white roses, were arranged with such care, as if they were placed with a ruler. I greeted the guests at the entrance, all radiant, as a happy bride should be. Yes, because it was Ethan's and my engagement party. Ethan was running late. Nothing new, he's always late. It's a professional deformity of a lawyer. Always something urgent, always some client who needs just 5 more minutes. But that evening, I didn't care. I was so sure that our relationship was perfect. We had been together for 3 years, and our engagement was just a formality that everyone had known about for a long time. My mother, slim and elegant, even at 54, came over to me with a glass of champagne. "Are you nervous?" she asked, smoothing out an invisible crease in my sleeve. "No," I smiled. She gave me an appraising look. "Laurel, you could have chosen a dress that was more traditional, something white with lace. You know Ethan's a classicist. There's my mom. Even at a time like this, she found a reason to point out my flaws." I just shrugged my shoulders. "I like this dress." "Of course." "Of course." She patted my arm. "Oh, I see Bridget is here. Finally." I looked around. My younger sister appeared in the doorway, looking as spectacular as ever. Bridget is the golden child of our family, the favorite of her parents, who has never done anything wrong in her life. I was always the older sister who was supposed to set the example, but for some reason, I always fell short of the ideal. Bridget, on the other hand, just glowed with perfection. Today she was wearing an ivory-colored dress, almost white, which hurt me a little. Who comes to someone else's engagement party in white? But I swallowed my irritation. "Hey, sis!" Bridget hugged me, throwing a wave of expensive perfume at me. "Sorry I'm late." I couldn't decide what to wear. "That's okay," I replied, feeling her long nails digging into my back through the thin fabric of my dress. "Look, there's Dad waving at us." Bridget pulled me toward my father, who was standing at the bar with several of his law firm partners. My father, Harrison Morgan, was the type of man you couldn't help but notice in a room tall, with silver hair and an aura of authority. His law firm was one of the most successful in the city. It was there that Ethan had started his career 5 years ago. "There are my girls!" His father opened his arms. "Laurel, you look stunning," a familiar voice finished for him. "Ethan, finally." I turned around, ready to scold him for being late, but the words stuck in my throat. His face glowed with some strange excitement I had never seen before. He was handsome in his navy blue suit, his hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes sparkling. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, kissing my cheek. "I had some things that couldn't wait." "You know I'll forgive you for everything," I smiled, feeling the tension release. "It's okay. We are together. This is our night." The next half hour passed in a blur as we greeted guests, accepted compliments, and drank champagne. Ethan held my hand, but somehow distantly, as if his thoughts were somewhere far away. I chalked it up to nervousness. After all, The official announcement of an engagement is a serious step. And then came the moment of the toast. Ethan stood up, took the microphone, and tapped his fork on his glass, attracting the attention of the guests. Family! Thank you all for coming to share this special evening with us. The room fell silent. I could feel my heart beat faster. This is happening. As you know, we are here for a very special occasion, Ethan continued. I want to propose to a very special woman that will change our lives forever. He looked back at me, and I saw something strange in his eyes. Something was wrong. Bridget, he suddenly said, turning to my sister, who was standing nearby. Can you come here? Time seemed to slow down. I watched Bridget, with a look of mock surprise on her face, walk over to Ethan. I saw him get down on one knee. I heard the collective gasp of surprise in the room. I could feel the floor swaying under my feet. Bridget Morgan. Ethan's voice was firm and confident. From the first moment I saw you, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? The room fell silent. I could see the faces of the guests, shocked, confused, some looking at me with outright pity. My mother was frozen with her hand to her mouth. My father frowned as if he didn't understand what was happening. And Bridget? Bridget giggled, lightly, as if it were a joke. Yes, she said, holding out her hand, on which Ethan had placed the ring. My ring. The one he was supposed to give me tonight. I stood there as if frozen. Something inside me cracked and shattered into a million pieces. But on the outside, I remained completely calm. Some part of me, the part that had always been the strong, practical Laurel, took control. I walked up to them, and the crowd parted like the sea before Moses. Everyone's eyes were on me. What am I going to say? What would I do? Will I scream? Will I cry? Make a scene? Number. I smiled. Enjoy your moment, I said quietly. But in this silence, everyone heard me. But this place? I looked around the room. I saw their faces change. Ethan turned pale. Bridget stopped smiling. Laurel, I can explain, Ethan began. No need, I interrupted him. I turned to the security guards standing at the entrance. Uninvited guests may leave, I said, nodding at Ethan and Bridget. The guards, professional to the tips of their fingers, approached the couple. Ladies and gentlemen, please come with us, said the older guard. You can't do that, Bridget exclaimed. We're your family. I shook my head. Family doesn't do this, Bridget. Now go away. And you can keep the ring. It's worthless anyway. Bridget gave me a look full of anger and fear. Ethan just looked confused, as if he couldn't believe his plan hadn't gone as he expected. When they were taken out, the room was silent again. And then, someone started clapping. One person, then another, then several. And suddenly, the whole room erupted in applause. My friend Rachel came up to me and squeezed my hand. Are you okay? She whispered. Of course, I replied with a smile that I'm sure didn't reach my eyes. The show must go on, right? And the show went on. I took the microphone. Dear friends, my voice sounded calm, almost cheerful. Obviously, there's been a slight change of plans, but the party goes on. Please enjoy the food, drinks, and company. I'm truly grateful to everyone who came tonight. I saw the respect in their faces, compassion, admiration. It was amazingly supportive. It helped me to keep going. I spent the next few hours talking to the guests, smiling, accepting words of support. My mom and dad came up to me. Mom was crying. Laurel, honey, I don't understand. How could this happen? She sobbed. I don't understand either, Mom, I answered honestly. But I'll get through it somehow. I'll talk to him, my father said sternly. This is unacceptable. He works in my firm, damn it. Don't, Dad. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'll handle it. They looked at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. Maybe it was. Perhaps it was the first time I didn't come unglued, didn't ask them to fix it. Finally, around midnight, the last guests left. I got into a taxi and gave my address. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Did you have a hard evening?" he asked. "The hardest," I answered, smiling with a tortured smile. When I finally entered my empty house, when I closed the door and was alone, only then did I allow myself to let go of control. The tears I had been holding back all evening finally flowed. I slumped to the floor in the hallway, still wearing that blue dress, and sobbed. How could they? How could Ethan, the man I planned to spend the rest of my life with, betray me so publicly, so cruelly? And Bridget, my sister, someone I've always defended, someone I loved unconditionally. I don't know how long it took for the tears to dry, but when it did, the grief was replaced by a cold, calm rage. I got up and went to the mirror in the hallway. My face was crying, my makeup smeared, but there was a determination in my eyes that I had never seen before. "They will regret it," I whispered to my reflection. "I swear, they will both regret what they did." And I knew I would keep that promise. Because if they thought they could just break me and leave, they were very wrong. They were very wrong. I spent the first week after the betrayal like a zombie. I hardly ate, hardly slept. I just wandered around my house in a kind of half-sleep, sometimes stopping in front of photos that I hadn't taken down from the walls yet. Ethan and I on his friend's yacht last summer. Ethan and I at my company's charity ball. Ethan, me, and Bridget, lots of pictures of Bridget. How could I have been so blind? That morning, I stopped at one special photo, the first one of Ethan and me. We met 5 years ago at my father's law firm's annual Christmas party. I was organizing the event, one of the first big projects of my then small event management company. Ethan had just started working for my father. He was a young, ambitious lawyer, a graduate of Yale University, with a charming smile and blue eyes that made you forget everything. He walked up to me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "The party is great," he said, handing me one glass. "You must be Laurel. I heard that's your job." I was impressed that he knew my name. Most of my father's employees looked at me as the boss's daughter, not much more. "Yes, I am," I replied, taking the glass. "And you are?" "Ethan Prescott, new to Harrison's team. I specialize in corporate law." He smiled, and that smile— God, I fell for that smile so easily. We talked almost all night. It turned out that we both love old black and white movies, good food, and traveling. He told me about his childhood in a small town in Connecticut, about how he had dreamed of becoming a lawyer since he watched Law and Order at the age of 11. "Your father is a legend," he said with a twinkle in his eye, "and working with him is a dream. I know I can achieve a lot under his guidance." This ambition was fascinating. At university, I met too many guys who didn't know what they wanted out of life. Ethan was different, purposeful, confident. Our first date took place a week later, dinner at a small Italian restaurant. Ethan was talking about his plans, how he wanted to become a partner in my father's firm, and then maybe open his own practice. "What about you?" he suddenly asked. "What are your plans?" I told him about my company, Morgan Events. It was still very small then, with only 3 employees, including me. But I had big ambitions. "I want to become the best corporate and private event company in the city," I said. "In 5 years, I want to have an office downtown and a team of at least 20 people." Ethan listened with a smile, but in his eyes, I noticed something condescending, like he thought my dreams were cute but not serious. "That sounds great," he said. "Although, with your last name, you could get a position at your father's firm." "You have a law degree." "I do," I nodded. "But it's not my thing. I love what I do." He just shrugged and changed the subject. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but I should have. Our relationship developed rapidly. 3 months later, Ethan asked me to move in with him. A year later, we were already discussing a future wedding, although there was no official proposal. Ethan said that he wanted to do everything right, first build a career to provide for us, and then formalize the relationship. I waited. I supported him. I cooked dinners when he was working late. I rescheduled our plans when he had to work on weekends. I canceled my own business meetings when he unexpectedly showed up with flowers and offered a romantic lunch. And my company? It grew in spite of everything. 3 years after I met Ethan, I already had 15 permanent employees and an office in a business center. Not in the very center, as I dreamed, but still. I was organizing corporate events for the city's biggest companies, including my father's law firm's annual parties. Clients appreciated my attention to detail, punctuality, and ability to solve problems on the fly. But Ethan, he always treated my work like a hobby. Sometimes he would forget about important events I was organizing, or come in late and tired, barely listening to my success stories. "You're doing well, right?" he would say when I tried to share problems or doubts about the business. "But I'm going through a really difficult period. This new client is really throwing me off track." And I backed off. I always backed off. I put his needs, his problems, his career first, because that's how I was raised. To support my loved ones, to be a support, to make sacrifices. And then Bridget started to come into our lives more and more. My sister, it's always been a complicated relationship. Bridget is 3 years younger than me, but since childhood, she seemed to be the one who leads. Bright, bold, confident. My mom used to say, "Bridget knows what she wants." Our parents adored her. Dad called her my little princess, and Mom always found excuses for her actions. When Bridget got a B, it was an achievement. When I got a B, my mom would ask, "Why not an A?" I don't blame Bridget for being a favorite. She just fit in better with what our parents wanted. She was the more proper daughter, emotional, outgoing, with the gorgeous blonde hair she inherited from her mother and her father's brown eyes. I was more reserved, practical, with brown hair of an indeterminate color and green eyes that no one else in the family had. But I loved my sister. I always defended her. When her classmates teased her in elementary school, I, a high school student, would come and deal with the offenders. When she failed her high school chemistry exam, I helped her prepare for the retake, even though I had my own graduation. When she broke up with her first serious boyfriend in college, I traveled from out of town to spend the weekend with her, even though I was in the middle of an important project. But there was always something complicated about Bridget. She knew how to manipulate. She knew how to get what she wanted without worrying too much about the consequences for others. When she met Ethan for the first time, at her parents' Christmas dinner 3 years ago, I immediately noticed the way she looked at him. With appreciation, with interest. But I pushed those thoughts aside. Bridget flirted with all attractive men. It was part of her nature. "Laurel, he's fantastic," she said after dinner, helping me with the dishes. "You hit the jackpot, sis." I smiled, feeling proud. "Yes, he's really special." "And he's working with Dad," she added with a special twinkle in her eye. "He's going to go far, I'm sure." Over the next few years, Bridget began to appear in our lives more and more often. At first, she would just, accidentally, meet us at family dinners. Then she started calling Ethan with questions about legal matters. She worked at a marketing agency, and sometimes, she said, she needed legal advice. "Ethan is so helpful," she told me once. "He explains everything so simply, not like other lawyers with their jargon." Ethan seemed to enjoy her attention. Bridget told me today about their agency's new strategy. A very smart approach. Or, "Bridget invited us to a party on Friday. Is that okay with you?" I didn't mind. Why should I? She's my sister. I trusted her. I trusted him. But there were moments when I caught their eyes across the table. Moments when the conversation between them would get quieter as I got closer. Moments when Ethan would receive a message and smile a special smile, and then quickly hide his phone when I asked who it was. One day, about 6 months before the engagement, I came home earlier than I had planned. A client canceled a meeting. I heard laughter in the living room. Bridget's laughter. She was sitting on our couch, next to Ethan, so close that their knees were touching. There was wine on the table in front of them. They didn't notice me right away, and I heard Bridget say, "You're too good for her, you know." She doesn't even realize how lucky she is. Ethan smiled, but didn't deny it. He didn't tell her that he was the one who was lucky to have me. He just sipped his wine and shrugged his shoulders. Then I coughed, and they turned around. Bridget didn't even look guilty. "Oh, Laurel!" she exclaimed. "You're home early. We were just talking about that charity event you're organizing for Dad. I thought I could help with the PR." "That's nice of you," I replied, trying not to show my discomfort. "But my people have already covered everything." "Well, it can't hurt to have some help, right?" She smiled her trademark smile that always worked on our parents. "By the way, you look tired." "Tough day?" "Normal." I hung up my bag and went to the kitchen, trying to collect my thoughts. Ethan came to fetch me a few minutes later. "Everything okay?" he asked, hugging me from behind. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." Bridget offered to order food for everyone. "Will he stay for dinner?" I said yes, because what else could I do? Tell my fiancé that I didn't want my sister to have dinner at my house. That would sound petty and jealous. And I didn't want to be like that. This went on for months. Bridget was always there for me, at family dinners, at parties, sometimes just visiting on the way. She always found an excuse to contact Ethan, whether she needed advice on a contract, wanted to recommend him to a friend, or just accidentally met him outside the office. And me? I threw myself into my work. My company was growing. Now I had 25 employees, and I really became one of the best event planners in the city. I enjoyed my work, creating perfect moments for other people. Maybe that's why I tried so hard with our engagement party. I wanted to create the perfect moment for Ethan and me. A month before the planned engagement, Ethan started acting strange. He became more distant, staying late at work more often. Sometimes I would hear him talking quietly on the phone late at night, and when I asked who was calling, he would say it was a client from another time zone. I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too painful to consider. But the signs were everywhere. Bridget suddenly started asking me about my plans for the engagement party. "What dress are you going to wear?" she asked. "What flowers? What time will it start?" I told her, happy to see her sudden interest in my life. I thought we were finally getting closer as sisters. And a week before the party, Ethan said he wanted to surprise me. "Don't ask what it will be." He kissed my forehead. "Just trust me. It will make our evening special." And I did, because I wanted to believe that we were the perfect couple, that Ethan and I would create the perfect family, that all these years of support, sacrifices, and compromises were not in vain. Now, standing in front of the photos on the wall of my empty house, I realized that I had always known the truth. I saw the signals. I felt that something was wrong. But I was so desperate for everything to be perfect that I turned a blind eye to the obvious. Ethan never really valued me. He valued my name, my connections, my money. He saw me as a stepping stone to a better life, to a partnership in my father's firm. And when the opportunity arose to take another step up, to a younger, brighter version of me, to the real darling of the Morgan family, he didn't hesitate. And Bridget, she always took what she wanted. She always tried to outdo me, to prove that she was better. Marrying my fiancé at my own engagement party? It was just another trophy in our eternal competition that I didn't even want to participate in. I took the last photo off the wall, the one of the three of us smiling at my father's birthday last year. I looked at it for a moment longer and then threw it at the wall. The glass shattered and the pieces scattered across the floor. So did my illusions of a perfect family. It was time to face the truth and to do something about it. I spent exactly 2 weeks licking my wounds. And then I woke up one morning and realized that enough was enough. I am not the woman who will suffer forever because of the betrayal of her husband and sister. I am the one who takes control of the situation. First of all, I had to think about my business. Morgan Events was my brainchild, my pride, the only thing I had built without the influence of my father's name. And now that Ethan had become an enemy, I had to protect the company. He knew too much, my clients' contacts, the details of contracts, even my bank details. Most importantly, he had influence with my father, and most of my most profitable clients were somehow connected to Morgan and partners. My first step was to call my best managers, Rachel and James, for an urgent meeting. I have some bad news, I said as we sat down in my office. We may lose some important clients in the coming months. Why? Rachel frowned. Our work is flawless. Everyone is happy. Because of my personal circumstances, I answered bluntly. I'm sure you've heard about the fiasco at my engagement party. They exchanged glances. Of course they had. Laurel, James began gently, we've been together for 7 years. It's not about our professionalism, I shook my head. It's about Ethan's potential to harm us because of his position at my father's firm. Many of our clients are business associates or friends of my father's. And what do you propose? Rachel asked. Diversification. I opened the folder with the new plan in front of them. We need to start looking for new customers in other areas. And perhaps expand the range of services. We spent 3 hours discussing the strategy. James suggested paying attention to the technology sector, which was growing rapidly in our city. Rachel mentioned her connections in the fashion industry. By the end of the meeting, we had a clear plan of action for the next 6 months. Thank you, I said as they were leaving, for your support and for not asking too much. We're on your side, Laurel, Rachel replied simply. The next step was something more difficult. I needed to learn more about Ethan, about his true nature, and to do that, I decided to meet with someone who knew him before I did. Amelia Donovan was Ethan's first serious girlfriend in our city. They dated for about a year before breaking up suddenly, shortly before he met me. Ethan almost never talked about her, and when I asked, he was evasive. We just weren't right for each other. It wasn't hard to find her. Amelia worked as an art director at a well-known advertising agency. I wrote her an email, introducing myself as a potential client who wanted to discuss possible cooperation. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near her office. When I walked in, Amelia was already waiting, a tall woman with a short haircut and penetrating dark eyes. Laurel Morgan, she said as I approached her table. I knew it was you. Sorry for the little ruse. I sat down across from her. I wasn't sure if you'd agree to meet if I wrote the truth. That depends on what the truth is. She looked at me carefully. About you. About why you broke up. Amelia sighed and took a sip of her coffee. Are you sure you want to know? Absolutely. She was silent, as if weighing how much to say. Then she began. We met at a charity event. I was working on a big project for a children's foundation. Ethan represented a law firm that was one of the sponsors. He was charming, attentive. She smiled bitterly. You know how it is. He made me feel special. I nodded. Oh yes, I knew. At first, everything was great. He was supportive of my career, interested in my projects, and then, she paused. Then I introduced him to my father. And? My father is Victor Donovan. You've heard of him? A member of the board of directors of Atlantic Media Group? I was surprised. Yes, he is. And suddenly, Ethan became more interested in my father than in me. He kept asking me to organize meetings, dinners, and introductions to my father's business partners. He began to make some plans about how he would move to the corporate department of their law firm. Amelia looked away, staring out the window. And then I found out that he was dating my father's assistant. At the same time as me, she had direct access to his schedule, contacts, documents. Amelia turned to me. When I confronted him, he denied everything. And then he just left, said I was paranoid and that he didn't want that kind of relationship. And then, a month later, he showed up at my father's office. I added quietly. Right, Amelia nodded. I heard that your father offered him a job after one of his business partners recommended Ethan. Can you guess who? Your father? Bingo! She saluted me with her cup. Ethan managed to impress him in the few meetings I organized. My breakup with Ethan hadn't affected my father's opinion of his professional qualities. I sat there trying to process all the information. So, Ethan used women as stepping stones for his career. First, Amelia and her connections to the media corporation. Then, me and my access to my father's law firm. And now, Bridget, the younger, more promising version of me, the real darling of the Morgan family. Thank you for telling me, I finally said. It explains a lot. You know, Amelia looked me straight in the eye. When I read about what happened at your party, I smiled for the first time in a long time. The way you handled it, with dignity, but firmly, it was impressive. He didn't expect it. I didn't expect it from myself, I answered honestly. What are you going to do now? I'm not sure yet. But something tells me that Ethan is interested in my family for a reason, and I intend to find out what it is. When we said goodbye, Amelia shook my hand. Be careful, Laurel. Ethan may seem spineless, but he is dangerous when it comes to his ambitions. I nodded, knowing what she meant, and already knowing that I would not stop until I got to the bottom of it. The next day, the doorbell rang. My mother stood on the doorstep, impeccably dressed and with a look of restrained sadness on her face. Laurel, dear, she said, may I come in? I stepped back silently, letting her into the house. She looked around, noticing the photos taken down from the walls and the general mess I hadn't yet managed to clean up. I'm worried about you, she began, sitting down on the couch. Really? I couldn't help but sarcastically sneer. I wonder why. Laurel, I understand that you're upset. What Ethan and Bridget did was unforgivable. But we're a family. We have to stick together. I looked at her in disbelief. Stick together? After my sister stole my fiancé away from me at my engagement party? They made a terrible mistake, Mom nodded. But Bridget says they're really in love. Sometimes these things just happen. Just happen? I felt myself boiling. Mom, they planned this. For months. Behind my back. How can you justify them? I'm not. She raised her voice, but immediately composed herself. I'm just saying that the situation is complicated, and we have to think about the consequences. What consequences? Our family's reputation, of course. People are talking, Laurel. Your scene at the party has caused a lot of gossip. That's what it is. It wasn't my broken heart she was worried about. It was how the Morgan family looked in the eyes of the public. My scene? I repeated. You mean the way I dignified the traitors instead of throwing a tantrum? Don't twist my words, my mother frowned. I just want us all to sit down and talk about the situation calmly. Bridget is ready to apologize. Apologize? I laughed, but it wasn't a bit of fun. And then what? Am I supposed to forgive them and bless them with a happy family life? I stood up, unable to sit next to her any longer. Mom, you always put Bridget first. You always justified her actions, no matter how selfish they were. But this time, I won't back down. I'm not going to betray myself to keep up the appearance of a perfect family. Laurel! She stood up too. How can you say that? I've always loved you both equally. No, I replied calmly. That's not true, and we both know it. I was always the one who had to be smarter, more responsible, understanding, the one who was supposed to retreat and sacrifice. But not anymore. My mom looked at me with a mixture of shock and fear. Perhaps it was the first time she had seen me like this, confident, unbending, ready to defend my interests. I don't know what came over you, she finally said, but you're making a huge mistake by pushing your family away at a time like this. Maybe I went to the door and opened it, but it's my mistake, and I will live with it. When she left, I felt strangely relieved. For the first time in my life, I told my mother the truth about my feelings, about the years of hidden resentment for the unequal treatment of my sister and me. Although it didn't change her mind, it changed something in me. 2 days later, my father called. Laurel? He sounded tense. We need to talk. Not about family matters, about business. We met in his office, a huge corner office with panoramic windows that overlooked the city center. My father was sitting behind his massive oak desk, looking gray and dignified in his perfectly tailored suit. "I heard you were dating Amelia Donovan," he said without preamble. I tensed. How did he know? Does it matter? Maybe. He looked at me with an appraising look. What did she tell you? About Ethan? About how he used her to get access to her father and his connections? And you decided he did the same to you? Isn't that right? I retorted. He was dating me to get a position at your firm. And now that his position is strong enough, he's decided to move on to a more promising option, Bridget. My father sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Laurel, Ethan is one of our best young lawyers. Yes, he's ambitious. Yes, he sometimes crosses the line. So it doesn't bother you that he broke your eldest daughter's heart? I tried to sound calm, but I could feel my voice trembling. Of course it does, he frowned. But business is business, and I want to ask you not to make any rash moves. What do you mean? Not to dig under Ethan. Don't try to find anything that could damage his reputation, or the reputation of the firm. I looked at my father carefully. There was something strange in his eyes. Anxiety? Fear? Dad, what's going on? Why are you so protective of him? I'm not protecting him. He looked away. I'm protecting the firm. My legacy. What I've spent my whole life building. And how does Ethan fit into this legacy? He's working on important cases. Things that require a special approach. A special approach, I repeated. You mean not exactly legal? Don't put words in my mouth. My father suddenly became angry. I'm just asking you to stay out of things that don't concern you. What don't concern me? I looked him straight in the eye. Your protégé cheated on me with my sister at my own engagement party. And you're telling me that's none of my business? I'm talking about business, Laurel. I'm talking about legal matters. And I'm talking about the fact that Ethan seems to have some kind of influence over you, so much so that you're willing to protect him over your own daughter. My father clenched his fists on the table. I'm not going to discuss this. Just be careful, Laurel. Don't get involved in anything that could have unintended consequences. This conversation has only confirmed my suspicions. Something nefarious was going on at my father's firm, and Ethan was somehow involved. Now I was sure I had to dig deeper. I spent the next few days gathering information. I looked at news articles about the court cases that my father's firm was involved in. I studied financial reports that were publicly available. I asked my friends in legal circles, and gradually, she put the puzzle together. Several of her father's large clients were involved in dubious transactions, money laundering, tax evasion, and violation of antitrust laws. And in most of these cases, Ethan was the lead lawyer. He advised clients on tax optimization and helped create complex corporate structures that allowed them to conceal the real owners of their businesses. But this was not enough. I needed specifics, evidence. And for that, I needed someone who understood the legal intricacies better than I. Someone who knew the firm from the inside, but wasn't loyal to my father or Ethan. And then I remembered Noah Harris. Noah had been Ethan's partner on a couple of big cases 2 years ago. They came to the firm together, worked on important projects together, and then Noah suddenly left to open his own small practice. Ethan rarely mentioned him, and when I asked him why they didn't talk anymore, he was evasive. Different views on doing business. It was easy to find Noah's office, a small space in an old building near the center. Unannounced, I went there one evening when the working day was over. Noah was sitting at his desk, piled high with papers, when I knocked on the open door. He looked up, and I saw the tired face of a man of 35 with kind eyes and subtle gray hair on his temples. Laurel Morgan, he said, recognizing me. I didn't expect to see you. I'm sorry for the unexpected visit, I said, entering the office. It's about Ethan and about my father. He tensed, but nodded to the chair across from me. Sit down. I think we have something to discuss. I sat down, feeling like I might have finally found an ally. Someone who could help me figure out what was going on, and who might have a score to settle with Ethan. I know you left my father's firm because of different views on how to do business, I began. Noah looked at me for a long time, as if weighing whether I could be trusted. Finally, he spoke. It's a long story, Laurel, and not a very pleasant one. Are you sure you want to hear it? More than ever, I replied firmly. He nodded and began to tell me about how he gradually uncovered the schemes Ethan used to help his clients circumvent the law, about how he tried to talk to my father, but he brushed him off, saying that sometimes you have to be flexible in interpreting the rules, about how Ethan had gradually pushed him away from important clients and projects. I couldn't be a part of it anymore, he finished, so I left. And now you're running your own practice, I stated. Yes, he gestured around the modest office. Not as lucrative as your father's, but I sleep well. Noah, I leaned forward, I need your help. I want to know everything about the cases Ethan handled, his clients, about possible violations of the law. Why? He looked at me intently. To take revenge for his betrayal? Not only, I answered honestly. Yes, I want him to pay for what he did. But there's more. I paused, searching for the right words. Ethan used me. He used my sister. He's using my father, and I want to stop it before he destroys my whole family. Noah stared at me for a long time, as if he saw something I didn't recognize in me. Okay, he finally said. I'll help you. But on one condition. What's that? We do everything by the book. No dirty tricks, no revenge for revenge's sake, only truth and justice. I held out my hand. Let's make a deal. He shook it, and I felt that for the first time in these terrible weeks, there was hope. Hope not just for retribution, but for justice. That the truth, no matter how painful, would finally come to the surface. It is said that trauma either breaks a person or turns them into something new, stronger, more resilient, like a tree that has survived a storm and grown new, stronger roots. A month passed after my engagement fiasco. I woke up one morning and realized that I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Not only because of the dark circles under my eyes or the hollow cheeks, but something had fundamentally changed in me. A new firmness appeared in my eyes, and a new confidence in my posture. It was the day of my transformation. I made an appointment at the best salon in town and spent 5 hours there. When I came out, my long brown hair was shorter, with a fashionable cut and light golden highlights. Then I went shopping. I bought clothes that I hadn't dared to wear before. Bolder, more stylish, less comfortable for Ethan. This was only the beginning. The real transformation was happening inside. The next day, I called my entire Morgan Events team together for a staff meeting. 28 pairs of eyes looked at me curiously as I took to the small makeshift stage in our office. Thank you for coming, I began. The last few weeks have been challenging for me personally. But today, I want to talk not about the past, but about the future of our company. I turned on the projector and launched the presentation I had been preparing all night. Morgan Events has always been known for its reliability and traditional approach to event organization. This has brought us success, and I am proud of it. I paused, but the world is changing, and we have to change with it. The next slide showed the company's new logo, a more modern one with clean lines and fresh colors. Starting today, we are expanding our horizons. We will work not only with the corporate sector, but also with technology startups, cultural organizations, and the media. Next week, we are opening a new department that will specialize in digital events. I could see my employees' faces change from surprise to enthusiasm. It's ambitious, I admitted, but I know that together we can do it. Any questions? Hands went up almost simultaneously. For the next hour, we discussed the details of the new strategy. I could feel the energy in the room change. The eyes of my people light up. It was a wonderful feeling to be fully involved in my business again, to be burning with ideas. After the meeting, Rachel came up to me. "Who are you and what have you done with our cautious Laurel?" she asked jokingly, but there was sincere delight in her eyes. "The old Laurel is out of the building," I smiled. In the evening, I met Noah at a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town, far enough away from the usual haunts of my father's colleagues. "Wow," he said as I approached the table. "You look unrecognizable." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" I asked, sitting down across from him. "It's striking," he smiled, and I noticed that his eyes were actually not just brown, but had golden sparkles. It was strange that I hadn't noticed it before. "Did you find something?" I got straight to the point. Noah nodded and pulled out a folder of papers from his briefcase. "Over the past 3 years, your father and Ethan have been working with several clients who were, let's just say they weren't exactly clean under the table." He spread out the documents in front of me, copies of contracts, bank statements, emails. Atlantic Ventures, New Line Investments, Golden Bridge Capital, they all belong to the same man, Victor Carpenter, an oil tycoon known for his aggressive business methods. "And what's wrong with them? They are used for money laundering and tax evasion. Look at these transactions." He pointed to the columns of numbers. "Money is moved between companies for no apparent business reason, often through offshore accounts. They developed the whole structure. They created the legal justification for these transactions. They made everything look legal on paper." I felt a chill run down my spine. "This is serious." "How serious?" Noah rubbed his chin. "If this goes to the prosecutor's office, your father could get up to 10 years. Ethan could get a little less, since he didn't sign the main documents. But his career is definitely over." I sat there trying to process the information. My father, Harrison Morgan, a well-respected lawyer, could be in prison. "There's something else," Noah continued, pulling out another document. "This is the statement of intent Ethan prepared last month. He plans to become a full partner in the firm next quarter." "The same department that handles Carpenter's cases?" I said slowly. "That's right," Noah nodded. "And there's something else interesting. Look at the date of his application." I did. 3 days before my engagement party. "He was already planning to dump you," Noah said softly. "But he needed a more dramatic way out." "And Bridget was the perfect tool," I finished his thought. "The younger sister, the father's favorite. If he's with her, he automatically has my parents' support." "And access to your father's influence," Noah added, which seemed to be his real goal all along. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange mixture of pain and relief. It hurt to realize how cynically I had been manipulated. But I was also relieved that everything had finally fallen into place, that the puzzle had been solved. "What now?" I asked. "Now we need more evidence," Noah replied. "These documents are just the tip of the iceberg. We need access to internal communications, to emails, to meetings where these schemes were discussed." "And how do we get that?" Noah sighed. "It's complicated. But I'm working on it. I have contacts in the prosecutor's office who have been interested in Carpenter for a long time. If we can get them enough information to open a formal investigation, it will destroy my father's firm," I said quietly. "Maybe," Noah answered honestly. "But it will also stop Ethan and possibly save your father from even more trouble in the future." I nodded. It was a difficult choice, but it seemed to be the only right one. The next week, I received an unexpected call from Bridget. She wanted to meet, just to talk. I agreed, more out of curiosity than a desire for reconciliation. We met at a coffee shop in a shopping center, neutral territory. Bridget looked not as radiant as usual, pale, with a tense smile and nervous movements. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat down at a table. "I wasn't sure you'd agree." "What do you want, Bridget?" I asked her bluntly. She sighed. "I wanted to say that I'm sorry about what happened at the party. It was ugly." "Ugly!" I couldn't help but sarcastically snicker. "Is that all you have to say?" "Laurel, I understand that you're angry. You have every right to be. But Ethan and I, this is real. We didn't plan on falling in love. It just happened." I looked her straight in the eye. How long have you two been seeing each other behind my back? She looked away. It's complicated. No, it's very simple. How long? A few months, she finally admitted. But at first it was just talking. We talked a lot. He understood me like no one else had before. And then, and then you decided that the best way to tell me was to propose at my own engagement party. It was his idea, Bridget said quickly. He said it would be more honest than hiding it. How noble of him! I felt my anger boiling. And how convenient for his career. What do you mean? Nothing. I shook my head. Bridget, do you really think he's with you for love? That it has nothing to do with your name and access to our father? She tensed. Of course it's love. He's always telling me how much he loves me, how happy he's finally found his true soulmate. I noticed a shadow of doubt in her eyes. Perhaps not everything was so perfect in their new love. He says whatever you want to hear, I said softly. You're just jealous, Bridget retorted, but without any real conviction. You can't believe he chose me over you. If that's what you think, I stood up. I hope it won't be too late. I walked away, leaving her sitting there with a half-empty cup of coffee and a confused look on her face. I felt sorry for her, no matter what. Bridget had always been a bit of a lost soul, looking for approval and love. Maybe that's why she was such an easy target for Ethan. Life was starting to take on a new direction. My business was booming with a new strategy. We received several important contracts from technology companies that wanted to organize innovative product launches. I was spending more time in the office, immersed in the work I had always loved, but hadn't paid enough attention to in recent years. And then something unexpected happened. I received a phone call from David Foster, the founder and chairman of Foster Legal, my father's main competitor. Ms. Morgan? His deep voice sounded friendly. I've heard a lot of good things about your firm, especially after the incident at your party. I tensed. Thank you, Mr. Foster. What can I do for you? We're planning a big event next month. It's our firm's 20th anniversary. We want something really special that will be remembered by everyone in the legal community. And I was told that you are the best in town. It was a great opportunity. Foster Legal was known for its lavish events and generous budgets, but it also meant a direct conflict with my father's interests. Mr. Foster, I began carefully, you do realize that I am Harrison Morgan's daughter. Of course, he said, a smile in his voice. That's why I'm calling you. I've heard rumors that you and your father have been a little tense lately, as well as with your ex-fiancé. So the legal community has already been gossiping about our breakup. My professional reputation is not dependent on my family relationships, I said firmly. Professionalism, independence, courage. He paused. So, will you take over our party? I made my decision almost instantly. Yes, Mr. Foster. It will be the best party your firm has ever seen. When I hung up the phone, I felt strangely excited. It was a risk, to be sure. My father would see it as a betrayal, but it was also a chance to prove that I could stand on my own 2 feet, regardless of the family name. The following weeks flew by at a frantic pace. I worked on a project for Foster, while developing new lines of business and continuing to gather information about Ethan's case with Noah's help. Noah and I saw each other more and more often. At first, these were purely business meetings, discussing documents and strategies. But gradually, our conversations became more personal. I found out that he grew up in a small town in Oregon, that he had a younger sister who teaches school, that he loved old jazz records and hiking in the mountains. One evening, after a particularly long day of working on documents, we decided to relax and went to a jazz bar. You know, Noah said as we sat there listening to the wonderful saxophone, I've always admired you. Me? I was surprised. We barely knew each other before. All this. But I've seen you at corporate events. The way you organized everything, the way you talked to people. You always seemed so complete. You know what you want. I smiled bitterly. Obviously, I wasn't a very good judge of character. We all make mistakes. He covered my hand with his. The question is what we do after those mistakes. His touch was warm and soothing. I did not pull my hand away. That night, on the way home, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. Not euphoric, not crazy in love, but just calmly happy, satisfied. Over the weekend, I met up with my old friend Catherine, whom I hadn't seen for the past 2 years. We'd been friends since college, but after I started dating Ethan, our paths gradually diverged. He always found an excuse not to go to our meetings, and eventually I just stopped trying. My God, Laurel, you look amazing, Catherine exclaimed when we met in the park for a run. I feel like I've been reborn, I admitted as we jogged slowly along the park's path, like I've lifted a huge weight. I always knew Ethan wasn't right for you, Catherine said. He was too controlling. He was always trying to change you. Really? I was surprised. Why didn't you ever tell me? I did, at first. She looked at me. But you wouldn't listen. And then, we just stopped seeing each other. I felt a stab of shame. How much I'd missed out on. How many relationships I'd neglected for Ethan. I'm sorry, Kat. I was blind. Hey, it's okay. She nudged me lightly with her shoulder. The main thing is that you see clearly now. And by the looks of it, you're moving forward. So tell me about this new guy, Noah. What? I almost stumbled. We're just working together. Yeah, sure, she winked. Jessica saw you at the jazz bar last week. She said you seemed very close. I felt myself blush. It's complicated. We're working on an important project, and he's really helping me. But I'm not ready for a new relationship, not after everything that's happened. Who's talking about a relationship? Catherine asked innocently. Maybe you just need a friend, or something simple and nice, with no strings attached. I laughed, feeling the tension leave my body. How I missed such conversations, friendships without ulterior motives or manipulations. The next 2 weeks were full of work. Preparations for the Foster legal anniversary party were in full swing. I was personally involved in every detail, knowing that this was my opportunity to show the entire legal community of the city what Morgan Events was capable of. And maybe even annoy my father and Ethan a little bit. David Foster turned out to be a great client. Generous, but with a clear vision of what he wanted. This has to be the most elegant event of the year, he said during our first meeting, but with a twist. Something that will make people talk about it for months. And I knew exactly what that highlight would be. I decided to hold the party at Sky Lounge, a new luxury space on the top floor of the city's tallest skyscraper. With panoramic windows overlooking the entire city, including the building where my father's company was located. Symbolic, isn't it? Foster loved the idea. It's beautiful, Laurel. It's perfect. Harrison will be watching us celebrate from his office. He laughed. It'll make him bite his elbows. You're inviting my parents? I asked cautiously. Of course, Foster nodded. We're competitors, not enemies. And this is a professional event. All the important figures in the legal world will receive an invitation. He paused. Including your ex-fiancé. He's quite an influential figure in your father's firm now, isn't he? Yes, I replied dryly. Does that bother you, his presence? I thought about everything I knew about Ethan now, about his schemes and plans, about how he used me, and now he's using Bridget. No, Mr. Foster. In fact, I think it will be very enlightening. He looked at me with renewed interest. You know, Ms. Morgan, I think you have some of your father's character in you. That same determination. But you use it much more wisely. A week before the party, I met with Noah to finalize our plan. We had all the evidence we needed about the illicit dealings Ethan and my father had been working on. Evidence that could have destroyed their careers and possibly led to criminal prosecution. Are you sure you want to do this? Noah asked seriously. What will happen to my father? I looked him straight in the eye. If we hand over these documents to the prosecutor's office? Noah sighed. It's hard to say for sure. If he cooperates, admits his involvement, and helps us uncover the whole scheme. Maybe he'll get a plea deal, a minimum sentence, maybe even probation. And Ethan? It's more complicated for him. There is evidence that he was the initiator of some of the most dubious schemes, and he's unlikely to make a deal with the prosecutor's office. I nodded, accepting the decision. We'll do it at Foster's party. Everyone will be there. My father, Ethan, the most powerful lawyers in town, journalists. It's risky, Noah warned. A public scandal of this magnitude. Otherwise, they'll sweep it under the rug, I said firmly. You said yourself that Carpenter has connections in high places. The only way is to do it publicly, so there's no turning back. Noah looked at me for a long time, with a mixture of admiration and concern. You've changed, Laurel. For the better? For the better, he took my hand. I'm with you, whatever you decide. I squeezed his hand back, feeling grateful for his support, and something more, something I wasn't ready to name yet. The last days before the party flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. I personally checked every detail, from the menu to the lighting, from the flowers to the music. Everything had to be perfect, because this party would not just be a celebration of Foster Legal's 20th anniversary. It would be a moment of truth for all of us, for me, for Ethan, for my family. I stood at the window of the Sky Lounge, looking out at the city below. The sun was setting, painting the skyscrapers gold and pink, beautiful and eerie at the same time. My phone vibrated, a message from Noah. Everything is ready. Tomorrow, everything will change. I took a deep breath, feeling my hands shaking. Tomorrow night, all the cards will be revealed. Tomorrow, I will finally play my game in this game Ethan started years ago. And this time, I will not lose. There is a moment of silence before the storm, when time seems to freeze and you feel every heartbeat, every breath. That was the moment I was experiencing as I stood in front of the mirror in my dressing room and fastened my earrings, my favorite emerald ones, a gift from my grandmother. Tonight was the night that could change everything. I was wearing a burgundy wine-colored dress, elegant yet striking, with an open back and a small train. I would never have worn one in front of Ethan. He always said that I was better suited to more conservative styles. But the new Laurel was bolder. The new Laurel knew her worth. My phone vibrated. A message from Noah. Everything is ready. The journalists will be there at 8. Are you okay? Yes, I answered, even though my heart was pounding like crazy. I'll see you there. I headed to the Sky Lounge an hour before the party started. As the organizer, I had to make sure everything was perfect. The panoramic windows offered a stunning view of the evening city. The tables were decorated with fresh orchids and thin candles. Waiters in white gloves served champagne and canapés. A jazz quartet was tuning their instruments in the corner. David Foster was one of the first to arrive. Laurel, this is fantastic. He looked around the room. It exceeded all my expectations. Thank you, I smiled. This was a special job for me. I hear there's something happening tonight? He lowered his voice. Something that's not on the program? I looked him in the eye. Maybe, but I think it's better if you don't know the details in advance. That's smart, he nodded. Well, let's get the show started. The guests started arriving around 7. Every important representative of the city's legal world was here. Judges, famous lawyers, law professors, journalists from legal publications, and of course, my mother and father. They were among the first to arrive. My mother looked tense. My father, as always, respectful, with a slight smile that didn't touch his eyes. Laurel, he nodded to me. I must admit, this is impressive, although I'm surprised you're taking on Foster's project. Business is business, Dad, I replied in his own words. He narrowed his eyes, but before he could answer, a colleague approached him. Next, Ethan and Bridget appeared. She was wearing a white dress, he was in a navy blue suit, a perfect couple. But I noticed the dark circles under my sister's eyes, and the way she was looking around nervously. Ethan noticed me and froze for a moment, then whispered something to Bridget and walked over to me. "Saint, an impressive gala," he said, as if we were just old acquaintances. "Though I'm surprised you're working for your father's main competitor." "Not everyone sells out their principles for a career, Ethan," I replied quietly. "I've always admired your sense of humor. I hope you don't hold a grudge against me." "Grudge?" I looked him straight in the eye. "What I feel for you is no longer a grudge." Something in my tone made him tense. He opened his mouth to say something, but his cell phone rang. Looking at the screen, he frowned. "Sorry, I have to take this." I watched as he moved to the corner, holding the phone to his ear. His face gradually changed from surprise to shock to anger. At 8 o'clock, when the party was in full swing, 3 journalists from the local television station and 2 from the city's largest newspapers entered the Sky Lounge. Noah gave me a subtle nod, a signal that our plan was about to begin. David Foster took to the small stage for his speech. He spoke about the firm's history, its principles of honesty and integrity, and its future plans. And then, unexpectedly, he said, "Today, we have also witnessed extraordinary news in our legal community. It seems that some of our colleagues have found, let's say, creative approaches to the law." There was a whisper in the room. My father straightened up. Ethan was looking at his phone, pale as a sheet. "Of course, I won't name names," Foster continued, "but tonight's news will be very interesting." He raised his glass. "To honesty and integrity in our profession." The room erupted in applause, but I could see my father hurriedly pulling Ethan aside, discussing something intensely. I walked over to Noah, who was standing by the window. "They already know," I said quietly. "Of course." He nodded. "My friend at the City Times just told me that the first article will be out in an hour. They've checked all the facts. The documents we provided are genuine." I took a deep breath. And now the storm will begin. Less than 10 minutes later, Ethan flew up to me, his face distorted with anger. "What have you done?" he hissed. "Me?" I raised my eyebrows. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play with me. These journalists, this information about the firm's clients, it was you, wasn't it? You leaked information to your competitors? Information about the illegal transactions you organized?" I spoke softly but firmly. "About money laundering for Carpenter? About tax schemes?" He turned even more white. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into." "Only if he doesn't make the right choice," I replied. "If he doesn't disassociate himself from you and your schemes." Ethan grabbed my arm. "You're betraying your family for revenge." "It's pathetic, Laurel." "Let her go," Noah's voice suddenly sounded. He came over and stood next to me. "Now?" "Oh, so it's you," Ethan grimaced. "Always so principled. It won't do you any good, you know. The firm will survive, but the two of you—" "Ethan, what's going on?" Bridget came over to us. "You look, your sister betrayed us all," Ethan interrupted. "She gave confidential information about the firm's clients to the press. Slander, pure and simple." Bridget looked from him to me. "Laurel, is it true?" "It's not slander if it's true, Bridget," I replied calmly. "Ethan has been helping his father's clients skirt the law for years. Money laundering, tax evasion." "That's absurd!" Ethan exclaimed, his voice trembling treacherously. "And you know what's even more interesting?" I continued. "He used you just like he used me. Just to get closer to his father, to gain influence, to make partner." "Don't listen to her." Ethan grabbed Bridget's arm. "She's just jealous. She's always been jealous of you." "Show her, Noah," I asked. Noah pulled an envelope out of his pocket and handed it to Bridget. "This is Ethan's letter of intent to become a partner in the firm. Look at the date." Bridget opened the envelope and skimmed the document. Her face changed. 3 days before the engagement? "You were already planning—" "It's not what you think," Ethan said quickly. "It's just a formality." "And there's also a recording of your conversation with Carpenter," I added, "where you say you have great access to old Morgan through his daughters." "That's plural, Ethan." "Daughters." Bridget stepped away from him as if his touch had suddenly become poisonous. You were using me? Of course not, darling. He tried to smile, but it was crooked. It's all twisted, taken out of context. I've seen the way you've been acting these past weeks, Bridget said quietly. I thought it was because of the pressure at work, but really, her voice trembled, and I suddenly saw in her the little sister I used to protect from bullies at school. Bridget, I touched her arm gently. I'm sorry this happened, but it's better to know the truth now than later. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. You knew all along? What he is like. I guessed, I answered honestly, but I closed my eyes. Just like you. Meanwhile, the hall was filled with the buzz of conversation. People were looking at their phones, showing each other the screens. The article came out and exploded like a bomb. My father pushed his way through the crowd to us. Laurel, what have you done? His face was gray with shock. Something that should have been done a long time ago, I replied. Dad, Ethan has gotten you involved in dangerous schemes. They're illegal, and you know it. It's a business, Laurel. He ran his hand over his face. Sometimes you have to. No, Dad. I shook my head. It's a crime, and you have a choice. Either disassociate yourself from all of this now, or go down with Ethan. She's right, Harrison, David Foster, who had been watching our conversation, suddenly interrupted. This is serious. But if you cooperate with the prosecutor's office, you! Ethan suddenly rushed to me. You ruined everything! Noah stepped between us, but Ethan had already composed himself, realizing that everyone was watching. You're all going to be sorry, he hissed. Especially you, Laurel. Not anymore, I said firmly. And I'm not going to let you destroy my family. The next few hours flew by in a blur. Journalists took comments. Guests whispered. Some came up to express support, others to judge. My father eventually left with Foster to discuss how to proceed. Ethan just disappeared from the party without saying goodbye. And Bridget, she was sitting alone in the corner, dazed and lost. I went up to her. Do you want me to call you a taxi? She looked at me with tearful eyes. Why did you do this, Laurel? Partly, I answered honestly, but mostly to protect what's important. My business, my father's reputation, you. Me? She laughed bitterly. After what I did? You're my sister, Bridget. I sat down next to her. Yes, you hurt me. You hurt me a lot. But I don't want you to suffer because of someone like Ethan. She suddenly hugged me, sobbing. I'm sorry, Laurel. I was so stupid, so selfish. I hugged her back, but I felt like I couldn't just forget everything. The wounds were still too fresh. It's going to take time, Bridget, I said softly, pulling away. But maybe in time. She nodded, understanding. I'll do everything I can to earn your trust back. I promise. The following months were tumultuous. My father's law firm was shaken up. A few clients left, but most stayed, especially after my father publicly disassociated himself from Ethan and his schemes, promising a full internal investigation and cooperation with the prosecutor's office. Ethan lost his license to practice law and faced criminal charges. The last I heard, he was trying to cut a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Carpenter. My business was booming. After that party, many people saw me not just as Harrison Morgan's daughter, but as a strong, independent businesswoman with principles. Orders came pouring in from all sides. Bridget and I began to slowly rebuild our relationship. Sometimes we would meet for coffee and talk, carefully but honestly. She went back to school, deciding to get a master's degree in marketing. And for the first time in her life, she did it not to please someone, but for herself. My parents. It was more difficult. At first, my mother accused me of putting family problems on display. But over time, even she recognized that it was the only way to stop the situation from escalating. My father went through several difficult months of internal investigation and restructuring of the firm. But in the end, he came out of it stronger, with a renewed reputation for honesty and transparency. As for Noah and I, we continued to work together. He helped me with the legal issues of my business, and I advised him on marketing his small but growing practice. Sometimes we had dinner together. Sometimes we went to the movies or to concerts. We took our time. We both understood that real, healthy relationships are built slowly, on a foundation of mutual respect and trust. And this time, I wasn't going to sacrifice myself or my independence for my husband. Exactly 1 year after that fateful party at Sky Lounge, I organized another event to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Morgan Events. But this time, it was my party, my celebration, my victory. I stood in the middle of the room, watching my guests, friends, colleagues, clients, enjoy the evening. Rachel and James, my loyal deputies, were raising their glasses to the company's success. Catherine was telling a funny story to a group of colleagues. Bridget was talking quietly with my father in the corner. They both looked more relaxed than I'd seen them in a long time. Noah walked over to me with 2 glasses of champagne. "What are we drinking to?" he asked, handing me one. I looked around, feeling strangely peaceful. "To the truth," I said, raising my glass, "and to the fact that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can be the beginning of something better." He smiled and touched his glass to mine. "To truth. And to you, Laurel Morgan, the strongest woman I know." I smiled back, feeling warmth spread through my body. Life is never perfect, but when you finally find your own voice, your own strength, your own truth, it becomes exactly what it should be: real.